When you hear the name Hedy Lamarr, you probably picture one of the most glamorous stars of Hollywood's golden age. But let me tell you, that's not even half the story. Her real legacy, the thing she should be famous for, has almost nothing to do with the movies.
So let's start with a question that sounds, well, a little crazy. What on earth could a movie star from the 1940s possibly have to do with the Wi-Fi, or the Bluetooth, or the GPS that you're probably using right this second? The answer, incredibly, is everything.
You see, Hedy Lamarr was living this complete double life. To the world, she was the image on the left, the screen siren, the actress once called the most beautiful woman in the world. But completely hidden from view was the person on the right, a brilliant inventor, a mathematician, a genuine technical genius who was about to change the course of history.
And that brings us to her greatest secret. Because at the absolute height of World War II, while she was one of the biggest movie stars on the planet, Hedy Lamarr was also developing a top-secret invention designed to help the Allies win the war. So here was the situation. Nazi U-boats were just devastating Allied ships, and one of their deadliest tricks was jamming. They'd figure out the single radio frequency that was guiding an Allied torpedo, blast it with noise, and send the weapon completely off course. A huge problem. Hedy's solution was an idea that was way ahead of its time. It's called frequency hopping. The basic idea? Create a radio signal that's impossible to track because it's constantly changing. It's like a secret radio wave that only the good guys know how to follow. And the beauty of it is just how simple and elegant it is. Think about it. A signal on just one frequency? That's a sitting duck, super easy to find and jam. But what if that signal hopped between 88 different frequencies in a random-looking pattern? The enemy would never be able to keep up. As long as your ship and your torpedo are hopping on the same beat, like a secret handshake, the message gets through, perfectly secure. It's genius. And this wasn't just some vague concept. She worked with a co-inventor, a composer named George Anthal, and they got a full-blown US patent. And here's the coolest part. To make sure the transmitter and the receiver stayed in perfect sync, they used a mechanism inspired by player pianos. They used these synchronized paper rolls to guide the frequency hops. I mean, who thinks to combine a player piano with torpedo guidance? That's the kind of mind we're talking about. So you have to be wondering, right? Where does a Hollywood actress come up with this stuff? Well, to get that, we have to go back in time, back to her childhood in Vienna, and what you might call a very unconventional education. From the very beginning, Hedy was wired differently. Her father used to take her on these long walks and explain exactly how things worked, like streetcars or printing presses. By the time she was 5, she was taking apart her own music box just to see how all the pieces fit together and then putting it back. That engineering mind was always there. But her real, in-depth education in military technology came from a much darker chapter in her life. Her first husband was a man named Fritz Mondel, a notorious Austrian arms dealer who was selling weapons to Hitler and Mussolini. He was incredibly controlling and basically treated her like a prized possession. Now, Mondel would force her to sit through these endless business dinners with generals and weapons scientists. He thought she was just there to be the beautiful wife, the arm candy. But she was listening. She was absorbing every single detail about radio-controlled torpedoes and, more importantly, all of their weaknesses. She later called it technical osmosis. She got a world-class education in weapons tech while basically being held prisoner in her own home. So, after a daring escape from her husband and from Europe, she lands in Hollywood, becomes a huge star, and comes up with this brilliant invention. But this is where her story takes a really tragic and frustrating turn, because the world she now lived in was completely incapable of seeing past her famous face. Honestly, Hedy herself said it best. This quote just perfectly captures how fed up she was with a world that only saw her beauty and completely ignored the incredible mind working behind her eyes. So, driven by a deep love for her new country, America, she didn't try to sell her invention for millions. Nope. She and George Anthal offered their patent to the US Navy for free. All she wanted was to help defeat the Nazis. That's it. And what was the Navy's response? They basically laughed at her. They looked at the patent, saw it came from a movie star and an eccentric composer, and just dismissed it out of hand. They said the player piano idea was too clunky to fit inside a torpedo, and told them thanks but no thanks. This part of the story is just infuriating. Instead of seeing the genius that was right in front of them, they told her the best way for her to help the war effort was to use her pretty face to sell war bonds. They literally chose her beauty over her brains. And you know what? She did it. She was a patriot. That number you're looking at, $7 million, that's how much money she raised in a single night, selling kisses to anyone who bought a $25,000 war bond. It was a huge help, for sure, but it was such a tragic misuse of her real gifts. And so her brilliant, world-changing patent was stamped secret, locked away in some filing cabinet, and just forgotten. For the next 20 years, the world kept celebrating Hedy Lamarr, the movie star, with no idea that Hedy Lamarr, the inventor, had already given them a key to the future. But here's the thing about great ideas. They don't stay buried forever. And in the final chapter of her story, that forgotten invention was finally rediscovered, and it started to quietly build the digital world we all live in today. Just look at how long this took. Her patent expired in 1959, which means she never earned a single penny from it. But then, get this, just a few years later, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the US Navy was secretly using an updated version of her tech on their ships. It wasn't until 1997, when she was in her 80s, that she finally got any kind of public award for it. And this is her true legacy. That core concept of frequency hopping is the fundamental technology behind our wireless world. The Wi-Fi you're using, the Bluetooth connecting your headphones, the GPS guiding your car, every single one of those traces its roots right back to that patent from Hedy Lamarr in 1942. And this really puts it all in perspective. The amount of money Hedy Lamarr earned for her foundational, world-changing idea? A big fat zero. And the value of the modern industries that were built on top of that very same idea? Well over $30 billion. The injustice is just staggering. Late in her life, she often used to recite this quote. It's just such a powerful summary of her own life, isn't it? She was this giant with a giant idea who kept getting shot down by small-minded people who just couldn't see past her looks. But her advice was to never, ever let that stop you. And that's really what her story leaves us with. It's an incredible tale, but it's also kind of a warning. It makes you ask, how many other brilliant ideas are out there that get lost simply because we judge the person on the surface instead of looking for the substance underneath? It's definitely something worth thinking about. Thanks for tuning in.